So welcome to the latest edition of this Aberystwyth Town videocast. I'm here with a man that needs very little introduction to people around Aberystwyth, from supporter straight through to director, media man, club secretary, you name it, he's done it. I'm here this evening with Mr. Thomas Crockett. Tom, how are you, mate?
All right, thank you, Matt. Yeah, great to meet up. I'm glad we can meet up for a chat because I really do miss the football on weekends, like everyone does, I'm sure.
And it must be weird for you this weekend, actually having to be at home rather than not being actually at the game yourself.
Yeah, it is really, and it's but from I suppose from one point of view, gives me a bit of empathy for what it's like for everyone else, because for us administrators, we are at least lucky that we get the chance to go, whereas for most supporters, they can't go and see a game, and it's a sort of it's drag on your weekend, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Football's got the chance to make or break a weekend, really, as like Aber win on a Friday night, puts in a cracking mood for the rest of the weekend.
Definitely, yeah, like it did on my birthday when Aber were top of the league a couple of weeks ago.
But for the one night only, we were top of the league.
2 nights actually, Matt.
Two nights. Oh yeah, of course. TNS didn't play until Sunday, did they? So, how are the family? Everyone keeping well with you?
Yeah, fine. Thanks, Matt. Well, we're going into lockdown now. We went into lockdown at 6 o'clock, so we're certainly going to be exercising a lot because that's the only way we can leave the house. But yeah, I think it's you feel sorry for teachers, don't you, Matthew, at this time of year? We're probably dying. Wouldn't it be awful to be a teacher tonight?
Oh, it's fine. We've got half term this week now, so nice little time to relax. So.
Yeah, but there we go. Got a little holiday from the football at the moment, so I'm glad we can, do something else to hopefully keep people talking about Aber Town.
Fantastic. So let's take a delve back into memory lane. If we take you right back to your childhood, what was it about Aber that got you first involved in the club as a youngster?
So I think it was. It wasn't family or anything like that because my family didn't like football at all. So often it's someone's dad or your family. No, I was interested in football because I played it in school, and I went along to a couple of games where my dad, to be fair to him, drove me to the ground, but then let me at the gates because he hated football so much. He just let me go in, and they were really welcoming to me. They obviously noticed there was this young 10-year-old boy wandering around the football club on his own, and people like Diaz, who was a really big important person in my life. I remember my fourth game, Diaz arranged for the team. They bought me a football and invited me into the dressing room to present me with a signed football after the game, which if you're 10 years old is a big deal. And there were lots. Also, the guys who were running the team were really friendly. They'd all say, "Oh, come and sit next to me, and we'll have a chat." And so that's what the club is for me. Really, it was just a really friendly environment at that time, and I like to think that that's a really important part of our club. Always has been, and hopefully, still is, and will continue.
And as you said there, we were looking at really friendly environment, and you went as a youngster. Obviously, that carried on then going through to your teenage years. And rumour has it you were commuting back from Edinburgh, where you were at university, for some sort of certain number of hours.
I did that in Oxford as well. So I lived. I didn't come to every game from Edinburgh, but I did come down probably more than I should have done. For a young man in uni, and then I also was living in Oxford for 3 years, and I used to drive up and down. I had a car then, so it was a bit easier. But yeah, it's been something that's it's really, apart from my family, it's the longest relationship in my life. Is Aber Town Football Club. I've been going since 1982, which probably is about 37 or 38 years now. So it's quite a big deal for me, but I think people know that about me, don't they?
Absolutely, and it's like 82, so that means we'll have the 40-year anniversary now in 2 seasons' time now, so we look forward to getting the bunting out for that one.
Yeah. Well, it's Preston St Andrews away was my first game. We won 2-1. Um, and that was the first game I remember. First season, 1981-82 season.
So Swans have been the first. Actually, that was the season the Swans in the first division, so it was actually quite a good season.
Yes, I think it was the day that Swans beat Leeds United and Alan Curtis did the arms thing. I think that was the same day.
I still maintain our second run in the Premier League was better than our first run in the first. So you moved to Russia as during as part of your education and your later life. How did you find that in terms of not being able to come to the Aberystwyth Town games?
Yeah, it was, well, I studied Russian at university, so it's kind of a logical step. It's part of the course. We spent a year abroad in Russia, and then I I went abroad teaching there for a year, and I also spent 6 months working for Oxfam out there, setting up an office. So it is at one point in my life it was a really big part, and I think I got quite homesick there. It's true for Wales, but also for the football. Of course, every weekend you're thinking, oh, you're sitting there in Moscow thinking I'm a long way from Chemist Bay or or Britain Ferry or wherever I really want to be this afternoon when I'm at Red Square or somewhere like that.
Didn't go to CSKA Moscow, or they didn't have the same thing for you.
Because at that time they had quite a good side, to a Champions League side, but it wasn't the same. And at that time, I think there was a website. I used to get the results on a Monday because I could use how far away does this sound now? We used to be able to go to the British Council on a Monday to get half an hour's free internet if you had a British passport. So I used to use that half an hour to go and check up on the football scores. But then there's a Russian newspaper called Sport Express, which is like L'Equipe really, but in Russian. Absolutely brilliant sports paper. And one week they started printing the Welsh Premier results. And I was so excited that I phoned up the paper and said, "This is amazing, incredible. Please carry on doing it. You made my week." And I actually got to know the sports editor then, who's since weirdly moved to the Faroe Islands. But that was So really, any sort of contact I could get with Welsh football I was grabbing really at that point.
Big question there: was it your family you were emailing first, or were you checking the Welsh football scores first?
My family didn't have email, Matthew.
Oh, there we are. So that sounds like a diplomatic way of putting that answer.
I do remember phoning my dad the night that Wales played Romania in that famous game.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, "Oh, you phoned me for a chat, have you?" And I said, "No, Dad, can you put the phone down next to the TV so I can listen to the commentary?" Sorry, Dad.
On the screen as well for both good parties.
Yeah, they should have put Malcolm Allen on earlier. Perhaps he would have done what he did against Connors Key and fired one in.
So once you moved back from Russia, obviously you carried on watching the club. How did you get involved with the director side of things?
Well, I mean, I first got involved not so much as a director, but funny enough, Matt, from your point of view, as program editor, because Anthony Evans was one of the directors at the time, and he'd obviously spotted me coming. And I known Anthony since I was in school. He was my first manager, actually, first football manager. And he said, "Well, you come into games, is there anything you can help out with?" And I said, "Well, anything, yeah, I'd love to." I started off as program editor, and then so I did that for a few years, and then I think it was 2009 when Tony Bates called me up and said, "Would you like to join the board?" And that was, was a really big deal for me. Obviously, it's real massive honour for someone with, for the football club means so much to me, that to be one of the people who's responsible for running it and, more importantly, keeping it going in the future is, is a great honour. So I don't take that lightly at all. It's something I'll always be proud of, I suppose.
So during your time as a director and involved behind the scenes of football club, what have been some of the biggest challenges you've had to face?
I think the difficulty really, if you look back, so I've been a director 11 years, and it's coincided with, funny enough, with the Super 12 as they call it, and I think the difficulty is balancing your desire to help run a stable football club with your desire to see your club doing really well and spending enough money to keep up with the other clubs, if that makes sense.
Oh,
So we've
yeah.
made, from one point of view, we've the club I think has remained pretty stable over the last 10 years, certainly financially speaking. And off the field, there's been some great developments like the 3G and the new stands and the new floodlights, everything like that. The academy. Um, we haven't. We've made. I think my regret, I suppose, is that we've been in the top six one of those 11 or 12 years, and that's, I suppose, as a football supporter, you'd probably want to say, oh, why don't we just go for it? As a football club, why don't we just chuck loads of money at it, and then maybe we'll get into Europe, and maybe it'll work. And some clubs do that. Obviously, quite a lot of clubs do that, have done that historically, but not a lot of them are still there to tell the tale. So
Probably look at some clubs who are throwing some silly money about in our league, and we're still, as you said, we're still here to tell the tale at the moment, aren't we? And
I think, if you can afford it, that's fine. And I think, if you want to look at TNS as quite a good model, a business model where they managed to set up a business that sustains the football to the point where they can guarantee European money. We're not there yet, obviously, in terms of competing with the top four, but I still feel that we are still in the league 25 years after it started, and it's only ourselves and Newtown have done that. I suppose so. That is something to be proud of, and yeah. So I think we have had some great highlights off the field. Sorry, on the field as well. I think playing in Europe was, for myself personally, going to Neon for the Europa League draw in 2014 was it was just so exciting to be part of that whole occasion, representing Abertown at that draw. And then of course we drew Derry City, which was even better because both of us had spoken before the draw that we actually fancy playing each other for different reasons. So that, as an administrator, then that is my highlight. And I think that team that we had 2014-15, when we got to the Welsh Cup final, we made the top six, we qualified for Europe, and we got to the playoff final the following year as well. That was really, for me, a point where the team, were really felt like we had a real special team at that point. And I think looking back, it even looks better because we haven't managed to replicate that since.
we have in the V, and that was about, around that area. It was the time that again, like you were saying, I've been going for years, but then around that era was the time I was proper getting into getting work behind the scenes type of thing. So again, that was a real special time as well. It's like we had those players there, and that Welsh Cup final. It's probably the most devastated I've ever been after any game, and I've following Swans for years, following Aber for years, and that Welsh Cup final was heartbreaking. I'll be completely honest with you, but we got Europe out of it, so.
Well, yeah, and the last team ever to qualify under that rule as well. But for me, the devastating one was the playoff defeat. I remember, because if we'd have won that, we'd have been qualified in 2 years running for Europe, which would have really probably stabilised the playing budget. And every year then perhaps it gets a bit easier to qualify again. Yeah, I remember the full time I went after that game, I actually went into the first stage room and had a cry. Honestly, I cried after that game. And then I came out and I remember seeing that only we had one player still applauding Newtown, and it was Wyn Thomas. And I remember seeing that and thinking, fair play, Wyn. That is sportsmanship. That's what I should be doing, not crying in the first aid room.
I've got to say, I always, when Wyn was interim manager, that's always loved interviewing Wyn. Always as honest as they came, and great bloke. And he's doing well. I saw him get his Armandford for Swansea Union, did very well down there.
Yeah, and he's still doing a great job with Dav down there, and perhaps we'll see them. You'd like to think perhaps they could liven up the Welsh Prem at some point in the future.
So looking back now from that moment we said we first went to the game as a 10-year-old boy to that last TNS game, how far do you feel the club has come in that time?
Well, when I first started going, we were playing teams like Preston, Montgomery, Four Crosses. We were playing at grounds that didn't, with all respect, didn't even have a fence around them. And we were playing in a league which is probably at that point is the same standards as the Spa Mid Wales League now. Some people may disagree, say perhaps they thought it was a higher standard, but I do feel like really to have gone from playing local football to playing national and in a national league and finishing in the top 10 in the national league, and then to manage to do that when the standards have been growing as well, particularly off the field. I do feel that perhaps it doesn't always feel it, but it is an achievement for any club to stay at that level of the top 12 in your country.
Yeah,
it's a big achievement, and I know if people see us playing in that league every year and probably think, oh, Aber finishing 8th again, but there are hundreds and hundreds of clubs who are finishing below us in the pyramid. Absolutely. So, and because when I was starting, there wasn't a Welsh Prem, there wasn't even a Cymru Alliance, and I spent years, making little plans for a Welsh league if there could be one, and then it was created. So I've never taken the Welsh Prem for granted, and I absolutely love the league, everything about it. I really big fan, and I'll go and watch anyone playing in the Welsh Prem.
The FAW ever come? Have you ever claimed to the FAW for a bit of royalties for your Welsh Prem League idea?
No. I wouldn't claim it was my idea, but it was something where I'd probably look at the Welsh League and the Mid Wales League and the North Wrexham area and then the other one, North Wales, and try to think, which clubs would make it through. So it was. I think it's it's a wonderful thing that we should cherish the league, because it has a value beyond its, just the games it plays. As a national institution, and that's important that Wales has these things that link people up together throughout the country.
Absolutely, you can see some of the players who are coming through. Even with us at the moment, we've got some of the boys who've done really well from our academy and going further on. You've got boys from across the leagues going into the Football League and going to play conference standard now. So the standards even getting better. The standards getting better. There's something there that people can aspire to be with.
Yeah, and I think the team is doing fantastically well this season, considering how young the average age is, and how how few of the players really have experience of this league. The usual sort of I suppose received intelligence is that you can't play in the league unless you've already played in the league, and our team this year are proving that that's not necessarily the case. So and if they were still quite close to top 6.
Absolutely.
If we were to make it this year, that would be an absolutely incredible achievement for Gavin and the lads, and I think it's possible. I do.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at Kevin Droids a couple of years back, where they got into top 6, and then they got into Europe through that and they had a fantastic season from there. So years open.
You never know, do you? You never know.
So if we were to have this conversation, say 5-10 years down the line now, where would you envisage, where do you hope to see Aberystwyth Town Football Club? And obviously in Aberystwyth, not like in terms of...
Yeah. Well, what I would like us to become is one of these sort of top 4 regulars, I suppose. That's my dream. That's what I'd love to see, because then you kind of it becomes, the more often you qualify for Europe, the easier it becomes to do it again, because that sustains your playing budget in a really in a really financial way. It's going to be quite hard for us to achieve that, because we we don't have a budget to compete at that level at the moment. So something the team that we've got are going to have to achieve something quite monumental, really, I think, to get into the top 4, let alone stay there. But that's what I'd like to think is possible, certainly. And if this young team sticks together, they're going to improve. So it happened with the Newtown team a few years ago, where they started off as a young group of players and ended in Europe. So it's possible, but I wouldn't want to, I think really that's a sort of supporter side to me, but the director side of me just wants to make sure that the club is stable, and that we're stable not just next year, but in 5 years or 10 years. And that, in some ways, Matt, that's not just about money. That's about making sure that you've got enough volunteers in the club to make things happen, enough board members in the club to make the big decisions. So I think, it's wrong to think about a football club just in financial terms, because it's a social thing at the end of the day, isn't it? And I've realised that since we've missed all the social sides this season.
Absolutely.
Not being able to go into the John Charles Lounge after the game has been awful, really. It's my favourite part of the day, is having a drink with people after, and with the other team as well. And it's so really, unfortunately, COVID has taken away a lot of the things that people really like about football, I suppose, which is the companionship.
Yes, and hopefully it won't be too long now till we get everyone back in. Tom, thank you very much for your time. Before you go this evening, we want to do a couple of quick fire questions for you.
Yeah.
So, first question: best player you've seen playing for Aber?
Oh. Favourite player or best player?
We'll go with favourite. We'll go with favourite player.
Favourite player is Diaz, obviously, for me, always Diaz. He was the headmaster of the primary school next to mine. We used to go swimming together on the bus with Llanby Hangler Craig in school, and I used to fight my way, try and sit next to him at the front of the bus. He's an absolutely wonderful human being, as well as a great footballer as well, wonderful goal scorer. So, yeah, he was, and of course, I mentioned earlier about the football that he bought for me when I was 10 years old. So it's got to be Diaz for me.
Excellent. Best Aber memory? Or favourite Aber memory?
Favourite Aber memory? I think for me it was beating Holywell in the Welsh Cup semi-final, which meant we'd pretty much qualified for Europe. And I just remember the end. It was a really tense game. It was quite a close game as well. It wasn't a 3-1. It was nerve-wracking for the first 89 minutes. And I just remember going around hugging people at the end, almost beside myself with joy. And that was, it was a great moment.
Lowest point watching Aber?
There was a game last year against TNS which just didn't go very well. That was I think it was 10-1 that game. I drove up with Morgan Roberts Young from Cardiff, and we were both so confused on the way home that you'll know, Matt, I'm a bit of I like a pizza on the way home.
Yeah.
You usually have pineapples, but we were so confused we ended up with olives and onions on our pizzas just because I don't know, our heads were completely fried by that.
That's a horrendous combination.
It was a strange experience, but
Yeah.
yes, it was. That was a bad day.
Then we went to 2-1 up in Kevin Droids on the Friday night. So what a weird situation.
Yeah, that was a wonderful, just 5 days after, wasn't it? So yeah, back to pineapples after that one.
Yeah. Well, it's how football goes. Just remember that, just popped into my head there, where we lost 4-0 away at Connors Quay on a Sunday, went to Carmarthen and won 5-0 on the Tuesday night. So
5-0 that was, Math. I think it was 5.
5-0. What a night.
Yeah.
Sum Aberystwyth Town Football Club up in 3 words.
Okay, friendship, sportsmanship, and occasional joy. That's 4 words.
With a hyphen between them, is it?
Yeah.
There we are. And final question for Quickfire. From your time watching Aber, construct your 5-a-side football team.
Okay, Diaz up front. I'll put Sherbs in there. Luke Sherborne has to be there. Absolutely brilliant player. Enjoyed watching Sherbs for about 10 years with Aber. I'll have Nigel Nicholas on the left side. Player, people might not know Nigel. He played in the 80s and the 90s, but absolutely brilliant left winger from Maen Clochog. I think I'll have Wyn Thomas at the back, just to ensure that no one gets an easy passage through. And you can ask me to pick a keeper, aren't you? I'll actually pick Cookie, who was the goalkeeper, John Davis, when I first started following the games. Because I quite often, if it was an easy game, I'd go and stand behind the goal and have a chat with Cookie. If Aber win about 5-0, he'd always have a lot of time for a chat for me. So I'll put Cookie in goals.
Brilliant. Tom, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And keep yourself safe, and hopefully it won't be too long till we're reunited.
Absolutely. And, message to all the supporters is that we are missing you terribly as a football club, and we cannot wait until the time we can welcome you all back again, because football's not the same without you. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate your time. Thank you to everyone for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. And we will be back with some more content with some Aberystwyth Town players, past and present, soon.